Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for um, showing up here with us today and for taking the time. My name is Martha Perez. I am with the Casas Technology Support Team, and I'm going to start presenting on today's workshop, TE Overview. So let me see. You see my screen? I'm showing the
Yes.
e-test online.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, welcome everybody. This webinar is addressed to beginning to intermediate users for TOPSpro Enterprise. And first, we're going to show you how to install the TOPSpro Enterprise software. If you're brand new, you might have gone through our website here, casas.org, and maybe looked around for where is a TE installation, perhaps. Well, this is where you originally start all. It's on our eTest Online website. And for the state of California users, you should use ca.etestsonline.org, but you can also just use the global server, which is etestsonline.org. We have various servers now, depending on the state where you are located. So we do have a simulation server also that we are going to be using for today's training. I'm just going to show you really quick how to do this. So you can click on that, go to that website, etestonline.org, and then click on the Install TE Client button, which is going to show you it's going to open a client application, which is a fresh installation of TOPSpro Enterprise. And we do have several servers. Like I said, there's the California, the Global, Rolling Hills, Lyric. So we have various servers in here, depending on the area you're at. For right now, I'm going to log in to the Rolling Hills simulation server. Something that, oh, and we do have that document that will show you the steps on how to sign in into the Rolling Hills, which we highly encourage. And thank you, Adrian, for posting that in the chat. We highly encourage to sign in to the Rolling Hills simulation server. If you have any questions about how to enter something, you can use this to enter anything that you would like to practice in and not really like ruin your data or your own information from your agency, and you can use the Rolling Hills. And this refreshes nightly, so anything you do one like today, for example, won't be there the next day. It will refresh back and to the pre-populated fictional data that we have. Something really important to have in mind is that the TOPSpro Enterprise is compatible with Windows computers only. It doesn't get installed into a Mac or even more into a Chromebook. So if you don't have a Windows computer and you have a Mac, then you might want to go into look into a boot camp utility that exists in the Mac computer. So you can install and partition your disk and install the Windows operating system into a piece of that disk from your Mac. Okay, so with that said, and using that document that Adrian just posted, you can sign in. We have 60 administrator accounts. We have 60 proctor and 60 coordinator and 60 teacher accounts. So you can use any number from 0 through 60, and that way you can sign in into the Rolling Hills database using the admin password, all lowercase, to connect into this database. And okay, let's see what's going on with this. And this happens. Let's try administrator 1 and admin, all lowercase. I guess my caps are locked. That's why it wasn't showing me the link. Okay, it wasn't connecting me. So I'm connecting now, and first thing you'll see is the end user license agreement as well. So let's just go ahead and agree to that. Oh, it didn't this time for me, but if you're signing in for the first time, it might ask you to agree. So this is our start page. It might be, it has too many links and a lot of information, which is very helpful, but it might come a little bit overwhelming sometimes. So the majority of us would just click on the start page and probably start from from the get-go, from here, from this menu. But let me tell you something about the start page. So I will bring that back from the view menu. We have several menus on the top that we're going to talk in a minute. But this start page, trust me, folks, it has so many successful, like really accessible links, like within the shortcuts. If I want to see like my listers, for example, like my students lister, I would just click here once instead of 3 clicks that we're gonna, show in just a second. But like if I want to go to the student demographics lister, for example, I just want to use the shortcuts here from my recent listers. I can also see users, tests, or whatever I have access to within this shortcuts list, as well as like if you want to see the demographics lister, this is the same way of just clicking in here. Your recent reports will be listed in here, as well as you would add yourself some reports into your favorites, and then you can also look into those. So this is going to be, very helpful once you start using more and more the TOPSpro Enterprise program. This is going to come very handy for you. So I'm going to close this now and go through some of these menus on the top area. You will see the menu on the top left and the user information on the top right, like the version and build and who is signed in. So you'll see your personal login information in here, like your name and last name, and then you have the general screen controls like minimizing, restoring up, and those controls on the top right. So starting on your left on this TE icon, if you don't know, or like if you're calling us in tech support and you don't remember exactly what your agency ID number is, you just hover the mouse over this TE icon and it's going to tell you what server you are connected to. In this case, we're connected to the Rolling Hills simulation server, and it also gives us this URL, the HTTPS. Agency ID number, it's listed right here. So that way you'll know for sure, what your agency ID is. So I'm going to click on this TE icon and you'll see that we have the ability to lock, to disconnect, to change password if you wanted to, associate account, or options, or exit just to close the program. But within these options, we have various other options. So just for you to have in mind, for example, we have like the general, it will inactivate your timeout interval. For example, this by default will show 30 minutes by default, but if you notice that this is locking like too soon on you and you just want to come back and have it open like I do, I just open it to 999 minutes, which is the maximum amount of time, and that gives me plenty of time to stay connected all throughout the day while I'm working with TOPSpro Enterprise, and this will not lock, like inactivate it or lock it out or log me. It doesn't log you out, but it just locks the computer. So you'll have to type in your password again. And this is just a simple solution if you're not in a public computer, for example. This will be your own computer. So we have other like on start, like some warnings that you will get from eTest if you have like less than 500 WTUs, and it keeps you giving that warning with red font. You don't want that. You can reduce that to 100 maybe. You'll get another reminder, or 50. I think 50 is the lowest it can go. I believe so. Anyway, the default is 500. If also other things like if you start typing a name and it just writes it in like proper, like it will capitalize the first letter and then it will do all lowercase the rest of the names. Like if you want to do it unchanged, like if you want to do it like how you want it, like if you want to type an acronym, it will only capitalize the first letter and not the last ones. So you can just leave it as unchanged because that's what I want to show on my listers. For example, if I want to type something and it won't let me do what I want to do, then just come here and name options unchanged on the edit view, and that way it'll keep it that way. And like that, we have several listers. I could go on and on, but you can go ahead and explore them for yourselves. If you don't know that you shouldn't just change stuff. If you're not sure of what you're doing, you can always give us a call and we'll help you out. But some other common things that, a lot of calls we get is that they can't find prior, prior years data, like the 1819 or 1920, which are pretty far away. But there's always this filter in place where it will hide program years older than so many years, or four, for example. So you can always, if you want to show them all the time, you can come here and show all the program years and select that. So that's another common one that we get. So just have that in mind as well. Anyway, we have other tabs here to explore from, and you can use this little scrolling arrow towards the right so you can see any other, amenities that we have in TOPSpro Enterprise. So with that, I'll go ahead and close that. And here is our main menu on the top left area. The view menu, it'll allow you to enlarge your view. So I'm going to do that so you can have a better view. I have a very small screen here in my laptop, so that's going to help probably. We have start page and we have a dashboard, so that way we can just bring up any of those menus again. The organization menu, it has information pertaining to your agency. So anything that is regarding to your users, your staff members, your access groups, and all the information regarding your agency's info, it will be in the organization menu. The records menu, however, this will contain all the information pertaining to your students, all their demographic information, their enrollments, their programs, their test information, anything pertaining to the students will be in the records menu. So organization pertains to your agency, records to your students. Reports, of course, what it says in the reports menu, this will allow you to create reports that are very handy, in order to review your students' skills and their performance that they have done during their testing, and if they can get gains and, all this important stuff that teachers will, or administrators will need to do. So as you can see, it unfolds on other sub menus. So you can continue looking for other categories as well. I would highly encourage you to start generating any of these reports in the Rolling Hills database if you like, so you can see, what they look like. And that way, once you, for example, generate a report, then you would, come back to the general settings and make some changes if you want to. There's many ways that we can, regenerate these reports as well. And we also have something really cool, I think. It's the reports locator wizard. If you don't know exactly where to find your report that you're looking for within all these menus, then come to the report locator wizard. This report locator wizard, and Adrian is going to go through the report section a little bit later, but I just wanted to show you this really quick because I think this is really cool to know. Like if you don't know exactly what report you're looking at, you're trying to find, but if you want to search something for gains, then you can just type gain as a keyword in here, and this will show you all of the possible gains reports that we have. You have 4, as you can see here. So you can show the student learning gains, for example, and you can either launch it from here or you can add it to your reports. If you add it to your reports, for example, I'll click on this button, add to my reports, and you'll see that under my report section at the bottom, you'll see this student learning gains. So you can either launch it from here, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where it will go. So I'm going to close it for now because I have saved it into my reports. And I'm also going to save another one, which is let's see, individual skills profile, for example, individual skills profile. I'm going to also add that to my reports. And well, I added both, but let me just remove one. And then I close that. So now what do I do? Well, I go to reports again and I click on my reports. And now you're going to see the 2 reports that I added. And once you click on any of these links, it's going to show you the report generator section where you can generate it. Okay, so this is something that you can also do if you want to save your own favorites. And also you're going to see them displayed in the start page. So in the start page, if you see under shortcuts here, you're going to scroll down and then you're going to find my reports. And these sections, you can actually click on these, and I guess you can unpin this, unpin that, and that way we'll see it, we'll have a better view of my report. So you can see the student learning gains and the individual skills profile have been saved into my favorites kind of thing. So that way you can just click on here and you know, generate your reports. So now the tools menu has any particular wizards that we have available. For example, if you're scanning, there's a scanning wizard, a third-party import wizard. If you have an attendance system that you might be using at your own local agency, you want to import, you can use this wizard. And we have other wizards as well, like the core performance, which are entitled to the California funded agencies for sending the survey. So, you know, we have different amenities here under the tools, and then we have the help where you can see the contents, release notes, and the end user license agreement for TOPSpro Enterprise. And so let's see, we're going to start by also looking at the demographics lister. So I'm going to go to record students demographics. And I'm going to show you how you can manually add in a student in your database. Let's say we have this lister, and I personally love you looking at this list as in the last name format, alphabetized, because that's way easier to the normal regular default organized here is the student. This will be listed here or sorted by student ID. So I really don't know any student IDs by heart. So and this last name column is always, I right click in this last name in the gray area on the top of this column header, and I show this other menu. So normally by default, you would have the full name. That's what it normally will show, the full name. So it will show you like this, but if I want to separate it, I would just right click and show the last name. For example, when I populate that column, the last name and the first name, and then if the middle name, if you want to. But the name column, I would just get rid of. So I'll hide the full name, and then I'll click on these little two buttons. These are the sorting buttons, which you can also use this sort button as well. And columns, you can use the columns if you want to populate different columns as well. For example, I have the student ID, last name. What if I don't want to see the city, for example? If I don't want to see the city, I can click on columns and remove it, and then scroll down and click OK. Or you can also right click on this top area and hide ethnicity, for example, if you don't want to see one of the columns that you have in here. This is very similar to using like an Excel spreadsheet. As you can see, I can make it narrower, or I can make it wider if I want to, the columns. Or if you don't want to see some column, again, you can right click on it and hide it really quick. So again, I was going to sort it by last name. So I'm clicking on this little two arrows that point up and down. Looks like a little diamond, but it's really two arrows. So this will alphabetize your list by last name if you want, or by first name, however you prefer. So there's really a lot that you can do to this lister, however you want it customized. And then what happened next time you come in, you sign in, you'll see the very last, default section that you had. So you want to customize it, but you also want to save it. You want to save your settings. So how do you do that? Well, you would click under the More button. You will find this little button that says Schema. If you have a large screen, then you probably won't have a More button, because all the buttons will be showing across the top area. I'm sorry, do you have a question? No. Okay, so if you have any questions, feel free to enter them in the chat, and then Adrian and I will go ahead and address them. If not, you can probably mute yourself. Thank you. So again, clicking on the schema button will allow you to save this schema. If you want to keep it to the default, that's fine. I would do that unless you have a particular order, and I'm going to show you in just a second. So if you want to save it like the default, that's perfectly fine because we always have a filter embedded by default. If you see this little filter button, it's colored green. So that means that's something going on in there. And you always want to look into what's filtering it for. So this lister will always have a filter by default for the current program year, which will only show you those students who have activity in the current program year. So this will show by default. It's not gonna, it's only, and we also, okay, so let's click OK. And we have this counter also on the top area. There's 2012 records, and this is record 1 according to this lister. This is record 6 out of 2012 records. So if I, for example, want to find only, let's say within age group, okay, if I want to see age within these columns, which I don't see, and I have this scroller bar at the bottom, and I'm going to scroll towards the right, I don't see an age button. I do see a birthday column, but I really want to see age. So I'll go ahead and right click on that and we'll show age. If I want to see, for example, only those students who are from 55 to 65 years old, for example, I would click on this little filter button that looks like a funnel under the age column header, click on that, and then type in that I would want to start looking at people starting from 55 years to 65 years. Once I click OK, this is going to show me all of these people in that alphabetized manner through the last name. So if I want to see it in a different sorting, for example, if I want to see the younger ones on the top area, then I would click on this sorting button. Again, those two little arrows that point up and down, and that's going to alphabetize my lister or sorted by younger through older or vice versa. If I click again on this, it's going to point down, and then it's going to show me the oldest ones on the top. And so that's however you want it to show it. And if you also want to have a lister like this added into your schema, so click on the More button again and click on Schema. And here I would save a different schema name. For example, 55-65. That will tell me that I'm filtering for these group of students within that age group. So I'll go ahead and click Save, for example, and now I have a schema saved in here. I have a default, I have a 55-65, I have consumer. So you can create as many schemas as you want. So you can, retrieve these listers all within the current program year. So if I have that schema and I happen to close my students lister and I come back to record students demographics, it's always going to pull up on the general demographics lister. So I'll show you this under More Schema, and this is my default one. So because it's not showing me just the people from 65 to 55. So this is how you normally manage, and we have 2012 records on the top as well. So if I always want to go back to my other schema, so let me go back to default and then go to schema and then look at the different schemas that we have. Default and then 55 to 65. Oops, it looks like it's not saving my filters here. So let me do a little bit more work on this and I will show you how many people we have. There's 132 records for that. All right, so with that, you can add more columns as well. We have multiple demographic fields. Remember, folks, that this is a fictional database that's been, pre-populated, that you can always show other information. None of this is real, so you don't feel afraid to use that. That's not a problem. So that way you can filter for different information. One of the most common calls that we also get here in the tech support is that they sometimes cannot find a student and they know for sure they had registered them. And again, folks, this is because of the filter that we have set up by default, which is filtering only students who have activity in the current program year. But what about if that student existed in the previous program year, which was a 22-23, for example? I would come to the green filter button, click on the drop down arrow and click the 22-23, unselect the current one, and click OK twice. Once I click OK twice, instead of 2012 records, it's showing me 1,297. So that happens pretty often. They may have a record in a prior program year, so they're probably not looking at it. Or you can just simply remove the filter. And that way, when you remove the filter, it will show you all the students that exist in your database throughout the program years, ever since you ever started using TOPSpro Enterprise. And if you have a very long list of students, or if your agency is huge, then you might have thousands and thousands of records in here. And it might take a little while to populate. As you can see, this little scrolling bar on the top right. And I might need to yeah, it's probably my face over there on the top right. But if you have it open on your own, you'll see there's a little scrolling bar, and this will show you the progress of how many students or how many records is loading. So if I would use the scroller bar towards the right, then I will probably not see the end or the bottom of the list until this is populated. Okay. And then it says here, we have a question in the chat. It says, would you demo how to generate the regular reports such as class competency performance, summary, and payment points, etc.? Yes, we will definitely do that, Christine, but that would be contained in the second portion of the training with Adrian, okay? So bear with us. Thank you so much. Yeah, perfect. So now we're going to go through the process of creating a student demographic record, and I'll show you how you can edit that in the case that you would enter the student and we'll need to change that student ID. Okay, so let's see, we have another question. What if you can't find a student that has attendance that doesn't have attendance the month you are in? So if you have a student that has attendance and you cannot find them into the student demographics lister, we would definitely not be in this current program year, because the regular demographics lister will show you a list of students who have activity in the current program year. Remember, our original count is 2012. So I would highly encourage you to remove the filter in that case, Barbara. In that case, just remove the current program year and look through the student's ID number or name, and that way look up their class, their attendance hours. Okay, so I'm going to show you, no problem. I'm going to show you how you can add a new student manually. So by clicking on this new button under the students lister, it will bring up a student demographic, student information panel here. This is the navigator on your left-hand side. You can always see here that we have only edit view because we have not saved the record yet. So I'm going to unpin this so it will give us a better view of what this screen has, because it has a lot of information in here. There's different sections, but I am going to collapse all of them so it doesn't look that overwhelming, okay? And we'll start explaining one by one. So as you can see, folks, here, there's 5 general sections, which is identification, education, ethnicity, race and language, address and contact provider use, and consumer information. So let's start by expanding the first section on the top, which I consider is the most important one, because you'll need to have some key fields in here that you must enter in order to save your record. So student ID would be one of those key fields. If you don't have an attendance system, then you can either create your own process of configuring student ID numbers, but we also have another way that TOPSpro Enterprise can actually provide and create random student IDs that won't be repeated for your own students. And I'm gonna first go off to that, I think. Before entering any possible student information, I'm going to explain to that in a second. So I'm going to cancel. I'm not going to save it for right now. I'm going to close this, and you will find that under organization agencies. So once you go to the organization agencies lister, you're going to see your information for your agency. Double click on that to open up the record. And so again, there's many sections in here for the Rolling Hills Adult School, but under agency identification, you're going to find this little edit button that looks like a pencil. I'm going to click on that, and then you'll see this IDs auto generation method. ID's auto generation method, you can change the method. If you don't have an attendance system and you don't want to break your head figuring out how to create a student ID, so then you can do this instead. Change the method, and TOPSpro Enterprise will automatically generate student IDs for you, and you can also use this for e-tests online. So if you click on this drop down that says none, you will find 3 other options to do it, like a random or a fixed 8 character, or a combination of your name plus date of birth plus a random ID number. So if I just do the quickest and I'm going to go really fast by going to the random one, then it's going to ask me if I want numeric IDs or alphanumeric. So I just want to do numeric and a 5-character length. So this is like the quickest one, but if you are expecting like a large population, then I would suggest probably doing like 9 characters. That way it'll give you like a sample of auto-generated student IDs. Like this, it will look like this, and it will give you like an approximate or estimate number of IDs that can create for you that would be unique. So it's really depending on your agency and what your student population has. So then you would just select your own random, and I would click OK. And then if you want to say, are you sure you want to start using this, it'll ask you to confirm that. So then this will change it for everyone that is using this agency. Okay, it's not just for you, but it is for everyone. So if many people use this database, you all have to be in sync with this idea. Okay, so once I change it, I'm going to apply these changes, and forgive me if there's other people using the database for right now. It's going to change it to the random 5-digit numeric IDs. And with that said, I'm going to go to now records, students, demographics, and try
Oh,
to create.
Martha, sorry,
Yes.
real quick. There was a question in chat
Oh,
referring to something you just mentioned. They asked, can you define activity, and does having activity automatically enroll a student into our programs?
okay. Yes, that's a very good question. Thank you so much, Louise, for that. When I say activity, it refers to any type of enrollment, any type of tests, any type of attendance that the student may have in the current program year. So if the student joined the program and they enrolled into an ESL program and never attended to it, they're going to show up on your lister because that created some kind of activity. If the student took a test and then they left, they didn't return, they're still going to show up on your demographics lister because they had activity, as well as having a class enrollment, a test, attendance, or program enrollment. That's more of like the type of activity that I normally say, or it's more common to find. Also may have some goals or some other demographic information entered in there. So now I wanted to add a new student record by clicking on this new button, for example. And now, as you can see, this changed the view. I'm going to unpin this again to have a better view of it. And now it's saying use auto-generated ID. By default, it's going to say yes. But again, if you still want to enter your very own unique ID number that you want to create for them, then you would click on no, for example, and I can just make up something really quick from using my keyboard. I think it takes up to 15 characters. So it takes up to 15 characters. That's the most it takes. So it's really up to you whether you want to use the auto generation method like this or just make up on your own. And so with that said, the other minimum fields for you to enter is, other than the student ID, is the first name and the last name. So let's go ahead and create Susie student here with the first name and last name. And this is just a sample random student. If I wanted to go ahead and save, that will save it for me. However, this is not going to create any activity, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and click say, oh, I want to unpin first this navigator. So you can see how this navigator changes when we save a record. Other two validation fields would be gender and birth date. But if you don't have them handy, these will probably, identify the student better. But if you don't have it handy, then you can just leave it like that and save it as it is, even though it's going to ask you another question. So let me click on save for now. And this is saying some optional validation rules are not met. Save anyway, and then gender must be selected. So I can either say yes or no. If I say yes, it's still going to change. It's still going to save it for me, but it's better off to just, complete the gender if you like. So I'm going to click on female. As you can see, it was flagging it for me. So I'll go ahead and say save. And that way I have the gender now. And now take a look at the navigator. This has multiple other options now for us to explore or to look in within the student. So this is the student ID, which I am going to copy, and I'm going to try to find this student again under the student demographics lister. Okay, so I'm going to go to the pages button on the top right corner. You might not see it because you might see my face on the top right, but underneath that, it's the pages button. So click on that pages and say close all pages. This is going to give us a clean slate on how, to start working again in TOPSpro Enterprise. So I'll just go ahead and go to records, students, demographics, and I'm going to filter for our Susie student. So I'm going to click on this little filter button that looks like a funnel. And I'm going to right click and paste the student ID. And guess what? We can't find it. Anybody guess why? Any answers? Thumbs up? Nothing? Okay, so there you go. Thank you so much. There's no activity. So what we got to do is click on this little green filter button again, remove the current program year because we already have this filter in place, which is the student's ID. So we'll click OK and voila. There's our Susie student. So once we have her, I'll double click on her and we will be able to see all her information. And if we want to enroll her into a program, we would click on program enrollment and then click on new, for example. If we want to enroll her into a class, then we would go ahead and enroll her into this class, for example. Okay, so what happens if for some reason you need to change that student ID? Let's double click on her record again to open up. Well, we have this little edit button. And I'm using this account that has enhanced access as a data manager. So if you're not a data manager and if you don't have this little edit button that looks like a pencil and you must do that, well, you can ask your data manager to do it for you, or you can ask your data manager to allow you to update information. So that way I can change this off to whatever I wanted to say it. Instead of 70, I'll type in 80 and then I can click save. And that is how you would normally edit a student demographic record. And how about if I need to edit her name, for example, to show Susanna, and then I'll just click on the save button, and that way it'll save me all the information. Any questions so far? Okay, so with that said, I'll go ahead and turn it off to you, Adrian. And yes, if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email to techsupport@casas.org, or you can give us a call at the phone number Adrian listed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martha.
You're welcome.
Hello, everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. When I start sharing, I'll go off camera just to save on bandwidth. So let me go ahead and share, make sure everyone can see my screen. You should be seeing TOPSpro Enterprise start page. Everyone seeing that? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop my video. So question, Martha just showed how to enter student demographic data manually, but what are other ways that adding records and getting your information into TE? Does anyone know there's 4 ways of getting information into TOPSpro Enterprise? Does anybody know what that is? Anybody? Import, correct. So you can import it. Manual enter, correct, what Martha just showed us. So a couple of more is you can import, you can do manual entry. If you're still using paper materials, paper testing, paper demographic collection, you can scan it with a scanner. You can also, if you're doing e-testing and that's a new student, when you e-test your student, you have the option to ask for demographic data. And even if you don't collect the demographic data, when that student completes that, their record will be brought over into TOPSpro Enterprise. So they will have a record in TE. And so right now, we're going to go ahead and demo how to add sites. So Martha showed the agency level where you have your agency. Once it's to load that page, sorry. So here's your agency. And within an agency, you can have what are called sites. Now, sites are just subdivisions of your agency. And you can see here, you can add it by going to organization, agencies, and sites. And this will show us all of the sites that are associated with our Rolling Hills Adult School. So we have 2 sites connected, Site 1 and Site 2. And why agencies like sites is you have multiple schools. Maybe you have a remote campus, you have a South campus, a West campus. It's a better way of tracking data. And you'll see here that in this column, it says e-test site. That means that when we set up the site, we authorized it to be an e-test site. So any information collected during the e-testing is going to go automatically over into these sites into TOPSpro Enterprise. Now, some individuals may not have access to going under the agency. So in that case, another way to add a new site is you're going to go to organization and sites. And here again, we're going to see our 2 sites that we have. Now I want to create a new site. So I'm going to click on this new up here. Our container, Rolling Hills, that's our agency. Our site ID is whatever you would like your site ID to be named. So if we look back here and we want to stay consistent, I have RHAS North, West. Well, maybe we want RHAS South Campus. Oops. We can do South Campus. Now, this is set to Pacific Standard Time. If you're on a different coast, you can always go and do Alaska time, Hawaii, Central. There's other options. Here is that box where we will mark the site as an e-test site. That way, all of the information will come over from the e-testing. Here is the site contact ID. This is not required to create a site, but maybe you have someone specific at your new site at the South Campus that you want to be the contact. So maybe you have a data manager at that site. And just for fun, let's say my name here. Okay, so when I need to know information about this site, if I'm looking at all of my agencies, will it still go to another site? If you e-test at a main site, it will not go to another site unless that site is turned on for e-testing. So if we have time, I'll demo that at the end. But if you go to your etestonline.org, you'll notice that sometimes there's a drop-down menu under the sites. And if you have multiples, then you would have to select that site and the information would go there. Or you also just have your main container. So all of your information will always go to your main container, but if you want to go to a specific site, then it has to be set up that way. So we can finish filling out the contact information. State, California, again, this is all optional. Maybe I want to know their phone number. And then once I save my site, oh, I need to have a site name. So we'll just say RHAS and we'll just call it South. Okay, so then you'll notice this navigator column on the left opens up. So when this opens up, you have subsites, which is a little more in depth. You can have an agency that has a site, and within that site, there is a subsite. But that definitely goes down a twisty path that we may not have time for today. That's a little more in depth. You can also see your class definitions and your class instances that we'll cover later. These are all class definitions and instances associated with site. You can also see any users associated with the site, access groups, personnel, and so forth. So now that we've created a new site, maybe we want to add a new user. So you can add your users from here within the site, or I'll show you a different way, especially for data managers out there or site administrators who have the permissions. You're going to go to organization. Because again, remember Martha mentioned organization is everything connected with your agency, site, personnel. You're going to click on users. Now, because we're logged in at this agency level, we're going to see all of the users for all of the sites. Very long list. Well, maybe I just want the users for the site that I just created. So if I click this drop-down arrow, you can see there are our other options of sites. I'm going to go to the South Campus. We don't have any users, so we're going to create a new user. How do we do that? We go up here to the left hand and click on New. The edit feature will auto-populate automatically, but if it's not doesn't, then you always click on the pencil. When the pencil is light orange, the edit feature is turned off. When the pencil is bold, it's turned on. So we need to create a user account. So I'll just create a user account, adriantest@gmail.com. The user account creation identification is unique to the site and to the agency. A lot of agencies tend to use the user's email address. Harold Murillo asked, notice the 1, 2 in the name of the site, which field or box was that in? So when I created this site, that's a good question. When I created this site, what I did was instead of putting 03 here, I just put RHAS South Campus. So if we go back to, I'm just going to sidestep really quick. And if we go back to sites, yeah, it's under your site name, or I'm sorry, site ID. So I just accidentally did the name instead of the number. But good question. So the account, a lot of agencies tend to use the email address. You'll see this category, access control. Access control is granted based on group and individual rights. This is the one that we want to have the group access set for. There is role access as well for Teacher Portal. Teacher Portal is a new application associated with TOPSpro Enterprise that allows teachers and staff to access information on any web browser. As Martha mentioned, TOPSpro Enterprise has to be on a Windows-based computer, whereas Teacher Portal does not. But Teacher Portal is limited in the information that it's able to provide. Think of TOPSpro Enterprise as your main bank branch if you want to get some more information about your account, and Teacher Portal is your ATM machine for a quick withdrawal of information. Next, I'm creating the password. So I'm going to create a temporary password for this user. And you're going to have to tell whoever creates the user accounts is going to have to tell the user what their login and password is. Then once they log in for the first time, they will be prompted to change their password. Roles, I'm not going to use Teacher Portal today, so we'll leave that alone. And my access control is based on group. So under your groups menu, this is where you will find all of the access that you can grant the user. If the user has taken and completed the e-test coordinator training, you can grant them that. If they've taken the e-test proctor training, you can allow them to have that access. If they've done both, you can grant them both. And you'll notice you'll see ET, which is e-testing, and TE, which is TOPSpro Enterprise. Maybe I have an individual who I want them to be able to proctor at my site for testing. So I'm going to add the ET proctor. This message will pop up. It wants to verify that I am saying this person has completed their training. I will confirm. You notice that box changed. If you select the group, because I'm going to select another group, depending on your agency's license, you would have enhanced or basic. And for today's demonstration, I'm going to use enhanced. So TE admin access to your TOPSpro Enterprise admin is your second highest access you can grant. So you want to be careful with that. It goes data manager, TOPSpro Enterprise admin access, TOPSpro Enterprise basic, enhanced, and so forth. So when I'm granting this, I selected it, but you notice it's grayed out. You have to click this add button. Now, oh, it's because I'm signed into Rolling Hills. We're going to pick a different group then. Because Rolling Hills is a simulation, sometimes it doesn't want to behave the way we normally think. So now this person, Adrian Test at gmail.com, has ET Proctor access and TOPSpro Enterprise access. When they log in, their password will be prompted to be changed. The minimum fields for contact information to create a new user is a first name, a last name, and an email address. And again, I'm just going to use my fictitious email address here because the system wants to know some identifiers. Next, I'm going to click Save. Now you'll notice that there's another navigator column that's opened up, scored test scores. So this is anything associated with this user. But for right now, we're just going to leave this column alone. I'm just going to pick a column. As you can see, the user information, when you see that /, because I created this user at the site level and not the agency level, that means when Adrian Bogus goes to log in to TOPSpro Enterprise, like Martha had showed you earlier, they must log in with 4908 / and then the remainder. Otherwise, it will say invalid. So here is our new user. You'll notice down here we have container access rights. That means that this individual only has access to this site, to this container. We also have TOPSpro Enterprise menu access rights. If it's grayed out, that means it's set by default to whatever the group access is. Gray is default. A check mark is granted access if you want to override, and blank is you're denying access or enabled or disabled. We recommend highly leaving these set for defaults because sometimes if you change a permission in one category, it will block a permission in another category. Who can change a So if you need to change a user from a TE admin access to a data manager, that has to be done through our Go Live team. So if you email Go Live, LIV as in Victor E at CASAS.org, They can process that request for you. Tech support, we're not able to do that, but the Go Live team can. Thank you, Martha. So that's how we create a user. I am just going to close this because now we're going to move on to a class definition versus a class instance. And this is for the TOPSpro Enhanced agencies that have TOPSpro Enhanced. I don't want to save my changes. If it decides to close, there we go. You can grant teachers access to just their own class. You're going to do that under classes. Good question. Thank you. And right now I'm going to show you definition, how to create a class definition. So under organization, we have classes for enhanced agencies. And enhanced gives you more access to certain reports, being able to have classes and collecting certain data versus a basic. Under classes, you'll notice we have definitions and we have instances. Now think of definitions as the school building. Okay, it's the building where the school is. The building that changes. So when you create a definition, there's no timestamp on it. It will always be there. The instance is your annual class. What class is in room C this year? The building hasn't changed, but the class does. So first, we're going to create a class definition. So you'll see we have a lot of class definitions. Maybe we want to create our new class definition, not at the agency level, but we want to create it at this Rolling Hills campus. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click New. Our site is already set. My class ID, maybe I want this to be ESL Spring 24. So I know that this is my ESL class. It's happening in the spring and it's 24. Your course code can be whatever you want your identifier to be. So for today, I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Class description is, again, we can use the same one, ESL Spring 24. And you can use any class ID you would like. It can be alphanumerical, it can be just letters, just numbers, and your class description can be whatever you would like it to be. Your zip code. So those are for agencies that are using CTE classes. So if you have CTE classes and your organization is required to include zip codes and A22 course codes, you would want to use those here as well. So now that I have my definition, I'm going to go ahead and save. There is a reason for the extended ID. Thank you so much. I will go over that in 1 second. So the reason for the extended ID is once I save this definition, then I have all of these extra things over here that I can create. We're going to move on to the class instance, and then I can show you why that extended ID is important. If I have an ESL spring class and I have an ESL winter class, then I can name this, maybe this class ID was just ESL. Then over here in my extended ID, I need to differentiate between my winter and my spring. That's where I can do that. And I'll cover that in 1 moment. So once your navigator pops up, then you're going to go over to class instances. We don't have one yet, so we're going to create a new class instance. And here's where you're going to assign teachers as well as new definitions. We're going to click on that new icon. It is open by default to the edit screen. Program year, I want this for this current program year. You can see there's my definition right there. If I didn't want this class instance connected to this definition, and I started it not from the definition screen, this would have more options. So remember I said this is a spring class. These dates aren't set in stone, but they do have to fall within the fiscal year of the school year. So they must fall within July 1st, 23 through 6/30/24. So if I want my spring class to start in, we'll say April 4th, and it's going to run through June. Remember I said my class was ESL. This is where you're going to set your instructional program. I'm going to click on ESL. There is transition focus. So if you have any transition focuses for your class, you'd set them here. Special programs, Agencies who are running special programs would enter them here. Again, agencies that are running focus areas, that is your civic objectives, additional assessments. So your co-aps, if they're connected to this class, you'd add them there. The minimum for creating a class is what I've done. The program year, the date, an instructional program, and then I could just save it. Other information is available that agencies and sites can choose to add if they would like to. This helps with focusing more on data. You can add if it's face-to-face, classroom, are there computers in the class, what days of the week, and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and save this class. And now you see we have attendance, class enrollments. Here's where I can add students if I have student names that I need to add into. I can click on that and add in some students. So if I click on class enrollments, I don't think we have any students at this new site. So that's why we're not going to see any. So we'll demo that in a different class. Now we've created our class instance. When I go back to my definitions, you'll see I have this definition, class ESL Spring 2024. I want to show you real quickly why that extended ID is so important. If you're having the same class ID in, multiple classes with the same name at multiple times of the year. So our class ID is ESL Spring 24. Well, if I want to copy this and make an ESL winter or an ESL spring, let's say 25, and I want to do this for, or I'm sorry, it has to be within the same school year, but I want to change date. So now instead of it being from April to June, it's going to be from this class will be from May to June. And I go to save it, I'm going to get an error because there's already that same record. You can only have one class instance with the same name in one program year. So that's why we have to go then back over to our class definitions, and I'd have to create another class definition. I can copy this, but I'd have to add that extended ID. Once I duplicate this and I add that extended ID, then it will allow me to make the same exact class again in case I want to have it at different intervals. Maybe I want to assign different teachers, and that's where that class ID comes in handy. Now, as far as adding teachers, if we double click on our definition, this is where we add our teachers. We can go over to teachers and we can see if we have any teachers. Again, I'm on this sub-site, so I don't have any personnel records that are connected with my site. So for this project, we're going to switch back to the main campus so I can demonstrate that very quickly. I have to be mindful of my time. So we're under the class definitions. We can see the course codes. We can see the zip codes. So let's say I wanted to add a teacher to this class. Okay. So I'm going to go over here to teachers. And there's already one teacher added. Now I want to add another teacher to this class. If I click on new, it's going to bring up personnel records. Once I find the teacher that I want to connect with this class, then I will find their personnel record and I will pick the date that they are starting and I will save it. Now this teacher has access to this class and is assigned to this class. Now the personnel records, you can actually, when I created that new user, I can link that with an existing personnel record or vice versa. So personnel records are located under organization, personnel, and registration. Here we can click on new. And if I want to go for this container that I created, we can click on new. Link with existing user. Okay, I want to do that. I only have one user at the site. Perfect. They will need a personnel ID. And now I click on save. And I have that user now has a personnel ID, which allows me to attach them to a class either under class definitions, or once you create that personnel ID, if you click on functional roles, the same system. You go under new and you select your class definition. You select the date the teacher is starting and save. And now we have a personnel record attached to a class so that teacher can view records for that class if they have the right access. Okay, and speaking of having records, I'm going to demonstrate quickly how to add student records. So we're going to back out of the users and personnel. If I can click the X button. I'm going to go to records, students, demographics. I'm going to look for the student that Martha created, which you can use the student ID as she did. Maybe I just remember the first couple of letters in her name. So we just do SUS, and that will bring up all the students who start with that SUS. So Susie's student is not there. So we're going to close that and we're going to search for her by ID. There's always ways to find things. If they're not coming up in one category, then we can always find them a different way. So Susie is not coming up. Then we'll have to see why Susie is not coming up. So I'm going to click on my filter. I'm going to remove the current program year like Martha did before. Thank you, Martha. And now she should come up. So I remove the filter. Okay. 320, did I write down the name wrong? 320-66170. All right, we'll try this again. I'm going to filter by last name then. So I'll right click on the column. I will go down to show last name. And the last name was student. And then I will click OK. Okay, so we have two Susie students. We're going to use this one that Martha created. I wrote down that number incorrectly, so that's why the ID wasn't working. But again, there's multiple ways to find information, and going under the student's name is one of them. I'm going to double click on Susie. The reason she's not showing up in our current program year, if I go over to current program year, well, there is no current program year for Susie. Okay, I want to bring her into this year. I'm going to click New. I'm going to go over here to program year, the current program year. If I want to add her to a site, I can do that here and add. And if I want to fill out any other information, I can also do that here. And I'm going to save. Now, Susie maybe took a co-op test. She was enrolled in our ESL program. She took a co-op. I need to manually enter that co-op information. How am I going to do that? Well, we're going to follow the trail that we did, which is records, students, demographics. I would search for my student. Once my student information page comes up, I have options. So to enter a test manually, I would click on the test button here. And there's that new icon again. So I'm going to click on new. Class instance, if I want to associate the test with a class instance, I can. It's better to not associate a test with a class instance, in my personal opinion, because that way the test will follow the student. No matter what class the student is in, the teacher or the admin will be able to find that test. If I connect that test with a class, then it will only show up under that class. So let's say the assessment date was yesterday. And you can set the site. So maybe they didn't test at my site. Maybe they tested at North Campus. You'll see that these are fixed forms. So these are the ones that eTest usually offers. So those are your math and reading. If I want to add a co-op, which is that additional assessment, I would click here. And you notice all those other filters go away. Then I'm going to select my co-op from this year. I will put in my raw score. The raw score is how many the student got correct. and whether, based on what they got correct in the co-op that my agency created, was that score passing or not? Well, I'm going to say yes. And now I'm just going to click save. And now this student has a record for the co-op. Maybe I have information that I want to export and I want to share this information with the rest of my staff. I want to share demographic data, or I need to share test data. Okay, so let's go look at those reports that Christine had mentioned earlier. So I click each individual one. Martha showed how you could click on all and close all. Under reports, let's go ahead and demonstrate we'll do the most used one, which is test results, and we will go to profile, and I will select individual skills profile. So when we say you can export data, you can export data as a PDF, as an Excel, many different options. And I'm going to show you that here on this report. Now we have a lot of classes. What would be a good scenario to enter test info manually? Students usually go through eTest. That is true. There are some instances where agencies have storms that are going on, power failures, the internet crashes, and maybe you have to give them a paper test. Maybe you have your test data saved in a third-party system and somehow the test accidentally got deleted in TE, then you have to manually put that back in. Good question. Okay, moving along. So Rolling Hills and Adult School is a huge server. So I don't want to run a report, an individual skills report for the entire agency for all of the classes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it just by class instance. And I only want to run, so I'm going to unselect this, and I only want to run, let's say, for my ABE math and maybe my adult basic. You have these filters over here. You can select which class you want to run for if you have the enhanced version. You can select it by a particular student, a student in a particular year, what assessment form you would like to run it for. So if you want to run it for reading, for math, for listening, which site the test took place at, and so forth. You can also run it by the test, which will show you, I just want to run it for assessment dates for the last week. Okay, I can do that. I only want to run it for one form. I have that option and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and generate this report. So here's my individual skills profile report. It shows me their last two tests that they took, their scale scores, that NRS level, what form, total number, that's how many questions were asked. Total correct was how many they got correct, and attempted is how many did they actually attempt without skipping. And then it gives you a brief breakdown of their competencies and content standards. Now, if I need to export this, up here, you'll see this little export icon. You'll click on that. I have the option, I can export this as a PDF. I can export it as an Excel or as a Word document. So there's multiple ways to export it. Once I save this, and then I can take that saved file and I can share that with other staff. I can just email them the file. Maybe I just want to print this. The print icon's right up here. You can pick your number of pages that you print through if you don't want to see all 11 and you would just print. Maybe you want to change the layout of this report. There are different ways of doing it. I can see this report on 2 pages instead of 1. So that way I can see more of my report side by side. If I don't want to see 2 pages, I can always go by thumbnails. So thumbnails are just little, exactly that, all of your pages right here on the right-hand corner that I can just click, okay, I want this page, and it would look much larger on a full screen. I'm going to unclick my thumbnail. I'm going to unclick this. And maybe I want to see show summaries. So your show summaries is very interesting. It shows essentially the summaries of the page, what the student ID is, what this report is about. So it's a summary of the report and the major data on the report, the student ID and what the tests were. So it's a quick way to get a little snapshot. Okay, so that was showing how to generate this report. Again, we can also change our layout settings up here. And I can change it. Maybe I don't like blue, I want to see red. And I don't want to see portrait, I want to see landscape. I want to not see my agency first, I want to see my agency last. And then I'm going to click apply. So what that does is it'll regenerate my report with the pre-settings I already have. And you can see right here that it tells me that there's settings that are applied. So that ends the portion for our national information for TOPSpro and Pro. We are going to be focusing more on California side for generating reports for WIOA and CAPE. For all of our national attendees, thank you so much for coming. Holly Clark has posted an evaluation in the chat box. We would love if you could please do an evaluation of our performance today and of our training. Okay, Christine Williams, let me just kind of get through the national, and if I have time, we can go over the class summary report, or else if you want to send us an email, then we can connect that way as well. Okay, so right now, if there's any questions, go ahead and post them in the chat. If not, what I'm going to do is wait for Holly to, she's posted the evaluation, so please remember to click on the evaluation. We have about 12 minutes left, so I'll give about another minute, and then I'm going to proceed into the California side. And right now I'm just going to close my tabs. I'll close them up here. Oops. And close all my pages. Okay, so Leanne asked, will there eventually be content standard reports and competency reports for steps and math goals? Thank you for that question. We actually already have those. I didn't highlight those today for time constraints, but under reports, and if I go to test results and I go to competency, you'll notice these submenus. You'll notice the faint gray line. These down here are for the older testing series, so they are not compatible with steps or goals 2. Everything up here is. So they have already implemented that and they are in place. Thank you for the question. Okay, so for our California users, we are going to demo some submission reports for WIOA and CAPE. So we all have heard of quarterly data submission, as well as our employment and earnings surveys, which are due at the same time. When you're running your quarterly data submission reports, the best thing to do is to check your data first. We always recommend checking your data, making sure it's as clean and thorough and up to date as possible. So you would go to Reports, State Reports, California. We're going to go to our CAPE data integrity. And we're just going to run this one as is because it's our data integrity for the whole agency. Once it generates. So the CAPE Data Integrity Report, here you can view a summary of all of your agency's information. We can see how many students are enrolled, how many students are getting picked up by one of those 7 CAPE programs, and how many students are not being picked up. You see that some of these numbers, these sequences will highlight in yellow. When they're highlighting in yellow, that is saying that there is an optional drop-down menu. So if I right-click on this number, I have optional reports that I can run. So I can run my drill down to NRS monitor, which will help me see who these students are and why they're missing this data. So it's very very helpful for drill downs. Once you have looked at your data integrity report and you feel that this is up to date and it looks good, you will also do the same for if you're a WIOA, for your WIOA report by going to Reports, Data Management, NRS Data Integrity. And that's the National Reporting System. Normally, when you fix one on one side, it reflects on the other. The difference is the National Reporting System focuses mainly on those POPs, those periods of participation. See, you can see them right here. This is focused more on your POPs. Students that have, when they are not in attendance for more than 90 days absent, they will fall into a new POP, which essentially means the system is viewing them as a new student all over again. Once you double check this data and you feel this data looks good, then we can close this window. And controversially, the CAPE report focuses more on your program enrollments and the NRS is more on your POPs. So when your data is clean, you've looked at your data, it looks good, you want to submit it. Submitting your quarterly data submission is very easy. You go under Reports, you go down to, you go under Tools, my apologies, you go under Tools, Quarterly Data Submission, the correct year, the correct agency, we just follow the prompts. We're in Q3, which is due April 30th. Next, it will then ask if I want to submit both. If I have both as my funding, I will say yes. If I'm only CAPE, I will only say CAPE. I will click next. It will then generate both reports again. So the reports that we just saw is going to generate them again and really asking me if I'm sure that these look good for submission. For more itemized reports, so Leanne asked if the new steps and goals to reports, they do look different. They're more graph-based and less itemized based. That was done by design. There is no immediate change to have them more itemized, but if you do email us at techsupport@casas.org with your recommendations, we always pass those on to the developers, and they do look at everyone's feedback and take it into consideration. Great question. So here's our NRS data integrity report. Next page will be our CAPE report. And the next page just says, have you done all of these things? And you have to select them. 225 is jail program. If you're not a jail, you don't need to apply that. This is asking, have you checked everything? Have you done all of this information? It's your personal checklist that the system is asking. Let's make sure that we've done all of these tasks before we submit this. Same with the follow-up. Have we considered additional emails? So what we're going to do is just click some of these and click next. Again, here's your WIOA duties and your CAPE duties. WIOA wants you to review, have you taken all of your attendance hours? Did you correct any flagged data on that NRS report that we ran? So this is your other checklist to make sure that you have done all of these. Same with your CAPE. It wants to make sure that you reviewed that CAPE DIR. And then any comments, maybe you had a problem, maybe you had an import issue. You can put comments down here that we can review as well. So I am saying that I have done everything and I am just going to finish. And once I click finish, this will generate and it will then submit my quarterly data submission to TOPSpro Enterprise, CAPE, CDE, all of the necessary departments. And once it's done, I'll show you where you can locate that. It's thinking, it's uploading the Excel files. My apologies. Perfect. Okay, I have the option now. I can export that data. If I want to export the information that I just submitted, I can click export and it populates this field where I can select, again, PDF or Excel. That way you have another record. If I don't want to export it, I just click exit. And now I want to make sure that that was submitted. I want to see, maybe it's been a couple of weeks and I've been so busy I can't remember if I submitted it. Okay, no problem. So if we go under organization, and if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see quarterly data submissions. If you click on that, this will bring up your last data submission, and we can see that it says 3/6. Rolling Hills is a day behind. So even though it's 3/7, it's articulating that it is 3/6. And I can see that Administrator 10, which is how I was logged in, I generated my report and I submitted my report on this day. So if you're ever nervous about did I submit it, you can always check that way. We have about 3 minutes left. Were there any questions in regards to any of the information that we covered today or any of the information that you just saw about submitting your quarterly data submission reports? And to Christine, because we did run out of time, if you wouldn't mind emailing us or giving us a call and we can walk through that, generating the class summary reports for you. And that way we can kind of do a more one-on-one for what you're looking for. Okay. And with that, my portion is done. I'm going to turn it back over to Heidi. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I thank you all for joining us, and I'm going to turn this over to Heidi.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Martha. I did see a question in the chat that said, will you get a copy of this recorded session? We are going to put it forth to see if we can remediate it. We do have several, or we do have other TOPSpro overviews that are recorded on our website, but we do understand that each one can be different. So if we do not put this forth to remediation, we will at least share out the Zoom recording with those of you that are in attendance so that you can at least access that for 90 days. If it is remediated, once it is available on our website, that usually takes 2 to 3 weeks. Once it is available, we will, of course, email everyone who registered and let you know that it is now available and where you can find it. So in the chat, I did post the evaluation. Please do give us your feedback. It informs our professional development going forward. It's also a wonderful way to give feedback to Martha and Adrian for the time that they spent with us today. I'm sure they would value your feedback. Along with the evaluation, we have 2 more sessions coming up that are the same. So if you do have colleagues or anyone that your boss that you think needs to watch this to kind of understand, we are offering another session March 28th and also one April 25th. The links for those are in the chat, and you can grab them and send it to them and ask them to register. I also dropped the link for our website where you can go and look at all of our upcoming trainings. Let me see. I don't think there's, yes, and Adrian dropped all the information for tech support in the chat. So with that, I don't see any other questions or anything we need to address. So Martha, Adrian, thank you so much for this presentation today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting us.
Of course.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. With that, I will go ahead and close the room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.